Hey guys, welcome to another episode of On Another Line. Today we're going to talk about some of my favorite baits for the springtime in my area. It may be a little different for you in your area. I'm obviously in Ohio. So again, I'm going to show you some of the baits that I feel like that I have the most success with in my area in the spring. And I'm going to talk about why I think that is. But first and foremost, I want to welcome the new subscribers to the channel. Thank you guys for joining me. We have Logan KK2, Charles Bennett, Khalid Simpson, Galen DeLeon, Avis Stone, Samuel Collier, James Wayer, David Saunders, Corey Johnson, JT Eldon, Nestor Nunez, and Optradon. So thank you guys for subscribing. I appreciate it very, very much. But without further ado, let's get into this video here. And again, there is no particular order to these videos. I just want to show you some of my favorite as, you know, springtime's rolling around here in Ohio. What I'm going to be fishing with, what I'm going to be throwing. I'm going to show you guys some of my favorites, you know, favorite baits for the springtime. So if last year, if you guys have been on the channel for a while, you saw me catch about a 4.5 pounder at Rocky Fork Lake. Josh and I actually caught that on a Shadow Wrap Deep, which is a jerk bait made by Rapala or Rapala, however you want to say it, Rapala. This actual bait right here, this is a different one, this is a brand new one, but this bait right here is one of my favorite on the planet for the springtime. That's a jerk bait. I have several different types of them. So here is a Jackal Re-Range 130. This is a bigger version of this. So this is a 110 series and this is a 130 series. You can see the difference in the two. Quite a bit of difference, so probably half-inch of difference between the 110 and the 130. Different collars, obviously, different brands. They do have different different characteristics. For example, the Re-Range from Jackal actually has a weight inside here that when you cast, it actually changes, you know, locations in the bait, giving you a longer casting distance and better performance of this bait. So why do I think a jerk bait is potentially one of the best producing baits in the springtime for me is the fact that I can fish it slowly and it allows the fish to react slowly to it too. A lot of times you're going to catch fish on these jerk baits in scenarios where you are, you know, you're not paying attention to the bait. You're going to, you know, jerk it, you're going to make it move, and then it's going to set here. The cool thing about a jerk bait is that when you jerk it, it actually darts in the water, and depending on what bait it is. So this Shadow Wrap right here is one of the slow sinking ones. So once you stop it, it's going to slowly sink towards the bottom, whereas some of them, like this Re-Range 130, when you know, make the bait do the motion under the water, it's going to actually stay there. If not, some of them actually slowly rise, but the jerk baits that I like actually just stay right in the spot where they're stopped. So you're going to, you know, cause the bait to flicker under the water, and then it's going to, it may nose down a little bit, but it's going to stay in that general vicinity. So what happens is a lot of times when you see a bass, they nose up to those baits and then, you know, they're looking at it, and as soon as you make that twitch, that's when they eat it. I would say 90% of the time on bites for jerk baits, they're eating this thing while it's setting completely still. And I noticed that because, you know, I'll be working the bait and all of a sudden I'll stop it, and then as soon as I go to work the bait again, it'll just be loaded up. So they're eating it while it's sitting there in the water column. Again, no particular order, but bait number one, especially in the late fall, winter, even to the spring, this is one of my absolute go-to baits, and that is a jerk bait. Again, I fish all different kinds of brands. Obviously, this is a Rapala. This is a Shadow Wrap 11. Actually, let's see. Yeah, Shadow Wrap 11 Deep, slow sinking. I like the collar, very natural looking, kind of a shad pattern there. And the 130 here from Jackal, the Re-Range 130 is, you know, one of my favorite baits too. I like the 110, the Re-Range 110. It's actually tied onto my rod in my boat and didn't have time to go get that, so that's why it's there. The next thing you cannot discredit in the springtime is some sort of rattling bait, like a rattle trap, or so let's see. Let me grab a couple of these out of here. Some of my favorite baits to throw as far as the rattle trap rattling baits is going to be a red eye shad, or a we're looking at a Jackal TN60. There's a couple of them here, so look at these really quick. First and foremost, here are a couple red eye shads, different collar patterns. Obviously they are fairly different. You know, one is an orange crawl pattern, whereas the other one is like a fire crawl. I love this collar a lot. They do have a different rattling action. Actually, this one right here is a tungsten. It actually has a little bit louder rattle compared to this one. Another thing that you have to understand is that they do make these in what's known as a one knocker, which it'll have one bigger piece of tungsten or lead in there that causes it to just have a different vibration pattern. Here are another couple of my vibrating baits that I like. These are Jackal TN60s. I really love this crawl pattern here. It's a little bit smaller profile on the Jackal. And the reason I like these is because a lot of times in the spring around this area, the water's really blown out. It's really, really muddy. We have a lot of runoff and stuff into the lake. So this gives the fish something to hear when it's coming through the water. Also creates an extreme amount of vibration that the fish can feel, and allow them to hone in on it and actually find it and eat it. So their lateral line will allow them to feel it and, you know, basically use it as like a sonar system, find the bait, and then eat it. So that's one of the things. And causing a bait to, you know, be a reaction strike, in my opinion, in the spring is a big deal. So that is the, you know, a vibrating bait of some sort. Again, those are both Strike King red eye shads and the Jackal TN60s. They make a bigger version of the vibrating bait there from Jackal. I currently don't have any. Next, so the next thing is going to be bigger baits, big swim baits, big glide baits. Something that's going to, you know, again, as I mentioned before, I think a lot of times that fish want to have a bigger meal in the winter and the spring, because they're not going to, first off, in the spring, they're trying to feed up to spawn. One of my favorite baits for the springtime, and it takes, you know, very good conditions, or very specific conditions, is going to be this Jackal Gantarelle Jr. This thing is really cool because it has a lot of things that people don't understand about it, what it's here for. First and foremost, the hook tie is here. However, there's a loop right here. What you can do with this bait, a lot of people don't know this, but if you're like bed fishing, if you find a fish on the bed, you can actually tie a drop shot line or a drop shot weight on the front of this thing, pitch it into a bass's nest, and have this thing nose down in the nest of the fish's nest, like it's eating the fry in there. And man, like, think about that. You have a big 7, 8, 10 pounder on a nest, and you have this little bluegill sitting there nose down on their nest and not moving. You could twitch it. That is, you know, you're gonna get smoked. But I don't feel bad throwing baits like this. Wow, I just hooked myself. I don't feel bad throwing baits like this, especially in the springtime, because I feel like they're going to try to feed up, and they're going to obviously get ready to spawn, but they're wanting to use less energy to get more benefit out of the whole deal. So with this, you're going to have a lot more fish. You'll have a lot of fish follow these baits. But the ones that you do, it seems like they're going to eat it and be a little larger, in my opinion. So that's the Gantarelle Jr. It's one of my favorite spring baits. And again, this bait is not going to be something that you go out and just absolutely kill them on. You catch, you know, 100 fish a day on it, probably not. But the fish that you're going to catch are going to be bigger. A couple other things. So the swim bait style here is just a big fire tiger internal weighted. You know, this is a pre-packaged deal. Not sure who makes this. I think this is a Storm. I throw this thing all the time, especially in the spring. This is one of them. I have 2 or 3. You can see this thing is just beat to shreds. It's got, you know, stuff missing off the sides of it. It's a big thumper. It causes a lot of vibration, gets those fish's attention. One thing that I am leery about this bait is that it's been like this from the factory, and it really doesn't matter because the lead doesn't actually tie onto the line, but this hook actually is, it's wiggly. It has a lot of play. And that's where I've caught fish, and it's actually broke loose from the lead inside here. And again, it's tight on here. The hook is all one piece, but it does feel a little wonky in there, and there's a good 1/4 inch of movement. And eventually, what's going to happen is this hook is going to rip totally out of this fish, which is okay because, you know, you're still going to have the fish hooked because the hook shank is all still one part there, but it does allow you, you know, just be aware of that. Another couple of swim baits that I throw in the springtime. A couple of my favorites. This is a 4.8 inch Jackal Rhythm Wave. Love these a lot. They have some extreme tail action on them. I'd say my next favorite is going to be a Kitech or Kitech Easy Shiner. I love these 5-inch models here. I've caught a ton of fish on this exact same collar, this exact same bait. One thing that you're going to run into with the Kitechs or Kitechs, however you want to say them, is that they're fairly expensive. You know, you can see here, this is a tackle box. Purchased $7.99 for a pack of 5. It's not much different for the Rhythm Waves. I think they're like 6 something for a pack of 6 of them, so, or a pack of 5. So it's fairly expensive, but they do work. So one of the biggest bass I've ever caught in my life in the springtime came off of this lure right here, and this is a Fred Rumbanis custom jig called a Boom Boom Plus, made by Pepper's Custom Jigs. This is actually a collar called Squeaky Dolphin, kind of a chartreuse blue. What this is basically a spinnerbait, underspin jig, if you will. This is not to be discounted in the springtime. I love throwing this bait, especially if the conditions are right for a spinnerbait. First off, you can fish this bait a lot slower than you can a spinnerbait. You can also fish this thing a lot deeper normally than you can a spinnerbait. This is a 1/2 ounce swim jig basically with a spinnerbait tied on the bottom of it. I didn't use a trailer. I think it's plenty big enough. I think the the profile of it is fairly large actually for my area, so I don't put a trailer with it. You could put something on there like a half a swim bait, or maybe even you couldn't put a lot of motion there because this thing's extends out and does spin, so you don't want that. But getting contacted with all your other baits. But this thing right here will actually allow you to pick up some light if the light is there. For example, if there's a lot of light available in the scenario that you're fishing, that's a great bait to use. Again, this is a Pepper Custom Jigs Boom Boom Plus, a Fred Rumbanis signature swim jig with a spinnerbait blade tied on the back of it. Many different collars. I like the bright collars like that if it's in the springtime. Here's a gill collar. I like it a lot too. Same deal. Again, I got several of them. They're not cheap. Those things are about 10 bucks a piece, but again, some of my favorite baits on the planet for springtime. The last 3 things I'm going to talk about are, first and foremost, the chatterbait style or blade baits like this Rage blade here. Something that has a blade on the front here. That's going to cause a lot of commotion. It's going to cause a lot of vibration in the water and cause the fish to get their attention a lot better in those spring colder waters. And a lot of times, like I said, in my area, it is a muddy mess. So with that being said, a blade bait like this or a chatterbait is something that you cannot overlook, because these are absolutely very good producing baits. Something that causes a lot of vibration goes back to the same deal when we're talking about the Jackal and the Red Eye Shad from Strike King. Causes a lot of vibration, causes a lot of stuff in the water, so the fish know it's there and they can locate it. The next thing we're going to talk about are my last two, and this is when the fish get really, really finicky in the springtime. Two things I go to are going to be a shaky head, just like this right here. This is a shaky head worm that or a shaky head that I actually pour myself. I'm going to grab one of my favorite baits to put on here, which is a Jackal Nico Flick Shake. Basically, this worm was designed for the Nico rig. It has a thicker barrel on the end of it here than a regular Flick Shake does. I purchased them just for this technique, which is going to be the shaky head. And again, the thing about the shaky head is there's a screw lock right here on the head that actually your bait could screw into. So right here, there's a screw lock. So in order to put this thing on there and actually rig this bait, very, very simplistic. You're going to take the head of the worm or bait. You can really use any bait you want on a shaky head like this. So you can even have it already tied on your line. You're going to screw in whatever worm or whatever bait you're using with your shaky head, and I'm going to screw it all the way up to the head of the top of the head here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to bend the worm a little bit like this. I prefer to push the hook point all the way through the bait, so you can see that there. It's all the way through the bait. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the bait back up and cause that point to just bury up in itself right there. So hopefully you guys can see that. It allows it to be a little more weed resistant or weedless, but it also gives you the opportunity to not lose a lot of these things. Here's the thing about this. It also gives you a better hook set. Fish bites it here. It takes very little effort for that hook point to come out, so you can get a nice hook set on it. So that is one of my favorite baits when they get finicky in the spring, and that's going to be a shaky head, because it's going to bounce on the bottom like this. It's going to cause that tail of that worm to bounce and cause all kind of motion in the water. Something I've just fallen in love with in the past few seasons is going to be a Ned rig. Ned rig is one of the most basic rigs on the planet. Again, you can see here these are brand new. I haven't even busted the eyes out of them yet. Here's one that I have. This is a Ned head that I've poured myself. Do It Molds supplies a phenomenal mold that you guys can buy and do this on your own. There is a lot to be said about this. First and foremost, there is a little hook right here on the shank. What that is that when you press your bait up on there, it's a bait keeper. Doesn't allow your bait to come off here. You can literally rig this with any bait you want. A small crawl. Obviously, you can do the Z-Man Ned worms. Those things, basically where these things started, this head started. It's just a finesse technique. Smaller profile. I have these paired up with a mustad hook. I like mustads. They're really, really sharp. These things will get bit. The shaky head and the Ned rig will get bit a lot more often in the springtime, especially when the fish are, they're very finicky. They're hard to catch, maybe in some really clear water. So let's run this down really quickly in no particular order. My favorite baits for the springtime is going to be a jerk bait. Again, you can fish any jerk bait you want. My two favorite is a Rapala and a Jackal Re-Range 110. I showed you a Re-Range 130. There's several different brands, several different collars. I like to stay with the normal collar or the natural collar to your lake. We have a lot of shad around here. We have a lot of shiners, stuff like that. I have caught a bunch of smallmouth actually on a pink jerkbait. Depends on where you're at and what you're fishing. The next thing is going to be swim baits or glide baits. I showed you guys the Gantarelle Jr. from Jackal. I really like that a lot in the springtime. Jackal Rhythm Waves, the Kitech Easy Shiner, really good baits here. Again, you guys, these swim baits, I forgot to tell you how I rigged them. Just with a normal swim bait head. This is a 1/4 ounce. It doesn't matter what color you throw. Here are a couple 3/8 ounce swim jig heads from the tackle box. These are really, really good. Again, mustad hooks here. I try to match the head with the color of bait that I'm using. For example, this, of course, it doesn't matter. I use this black one a lot with the Kitex. It just seems to be more natural. Looks like a shad. Looks like their big eyes, their black eyes there. So, you know, the head I find doesn't really matter. Fish as big of head as you're trying to get down. For example, if you're really fishing really deep, you're not going to want to throw a 1/4 ounce unless you want it to fall really, really slow. Totally up to you. Next thing is going to be a swim jig or a blade bait like the Rage Blade or a chatterbait, or again the Fred Rubatus Boom Boom Plus. I really like those. Let's see. What am I forgetting here? And then the last two, again, are going to be the Shaky Head and the Ned Rig. These things, you know, they're going to catch fish. These are baits that I always have tied on in my boat if I'm going spring fishing, and you should too. Again, if you guys are in my area and you want to get your hands on any of these baits we've talked about today, head up to the tackle box in South Point, Ohio. And if you're not local to me, I'm going to drop some links in the description below so you can get your hands on it. Also, I'm going to drop some links down there below for some other products that I can save you some cash on. One thing that I do want you to remember is please shop local and have fun fishing, guys. That's what it's all about. In the next couple of months, you're going to see a lot more videos from me. You're going to see a lot more product reviews. We have the Tackle Box Open House coming up here in a couple weeks. Also, I am running a team for Solar Bat sunglasses for a video production team this year. If you're interested in becoming a part of the team and you think you have what it takes, I want you to email me your resume and some stuff about your YouTube channel or where you produce your videos to oalfishingshow@gmail.com. If you do that in the next couple weeks, you could be wearing some brand new solar bats for free this season when you're fishing. Guys, it doesn't have to be a fishing video either. If you produce, you know, we have lenses for golf. We have hunting lenses. There's a lot of different stuff. So if you're interested in being a part of that, or you know somebody that would be a good fit, have them email me at OAL, on another line, oalfishingshow@gmail.com. Until then, until next time, guys, make sure you get out there and lean on them. My name is Tyler Waller. I'll see you next time on another line.